just say I actually worked at Take-Two Interactive when Tony Hawk's came out, and I was the guy who had to do a press tour of the US selling Rockstar's Thrasher Skate and Destroy game. And yes, thank you. You made my summer. You're welcome. Okay, so that's licenses. Coming from the other side, this is the last point in the licenses that I think we should maybe make. Coming from the other side, Brent, obviously we're talking about bringing licenses into the games world. Taking games licenses out into the wider commercial world can actually give developers, can give publishers, you know, a bigger budget. It can give them access to a much broader audience. Is this something that you see as growing, and is it being accepted?
Now, do you mean a video game that's already carrying an established license from another entertainment channel,
no,
or a brand new? It's a video game.
A brand new video game.
It's more. It really depends. I think for smaller packaged good companies, I think you've got a better opportunity of attracting partners. I think that's what's probably a really good idea to kind of make clear is a lot of the things that we're doing. While we're happy to try to find opportunities for the brands that we represent to get actually in-game placement, that's not actually what we're really doing. We'll recommend all the time. For one, those in-game placements need to be very organic. So, and I think it's very troublesome, very difficult. So when we're looking for a partner, we do represent some medium-level video game companies too as well, and we go out and look for partners for them. Well, it's tough. I think I think like a Tony Hawk or something like that. I mean, you've got such strong personality. I think that game is something that has finally, I think, transcended in a way. But that's the strength of his personality, as opposed to just being just a solid game. Do you know what I mean? I think it's difficult. I think it's tough to find a promotional partner from a major packaged good company for a video game only franchise. I don't think they're quite getting it yet, and I know that in a lot of our cases, our job is to really educate consumer packaged good companies about the power of gaming. They still really don't know. They get it. There's a lot of buzz. Everyone's talking about it, but do they feel it? Do they understand it? And I think that there's still a lot of fear amongst a lot of people in the general traditional marketing industries and packaged good companies about video games. And certainly when they see the level of violence in the first-person shooter games, when they hear about Grand Theft Auto and using a hook and shooting her and then taking her money, right? These things, they resonate in the brand world, and I think that these are the things that we are always having to fight with when we're talking with the sports things are no-brainers. I mean, they get it. They get that. They get that. But if you're going to them with something that's not sports-orientated, you've got a real huge education process. And I know that we've helped EA on several occasions with Procter & Gamble specifically to get them to understand the power of The Sims, which of course is a very unique game. And we spent a lot of time with P&G, with several of their brands, talking with them about The Sims and The Sims Online specifically. And even in that case, having to explain to them how different The Sims is compared to all the other video games is a challenge enough.
Sure.
So I think it's a challenge.
Well, it comes down to just the personality of marketing teams in packaged goods versus gaming, and we've seen it because we've had a lot of packaged goods people come and go from Activision. Sometimes they get it, and sometimes they don't. Marketing video games is a unique challenge, and it's not something that somebody from P&G or from Mattel can pick up right away. I mean, you don't do things the same way. You're not fighting for share. You're not fighting for shelf space with a bigger, brighter box necessarily. You're marketing entertainment, but you're also marketing it as a packaged goods product. So it's a mix of two things. And I think the challenge that Brent was talking about comes in that when you talk to somebody at P&G, that brand manager doesn't really understand how we market video games, and so they don't see the value in it sometimes. So it's challenging.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's why having a licensed property is very important in terms of attracting the partners and starting to get the industry to at least. Well, what we're really striving to do is to try to bring the Procter & Gamble's into those core gaming magazines, where they're actually there, and it's now no longer just the industry talking to themselves. Because and start to kind of realize that this is a group of people that, you know, are the more interactive people, are more likely to sign up, you know, on lists and seek out information from you if you've got the right promotion and the right message. Because I think there's a lot of power there. So if you have an entertainment property that you've licensed, it's a lot easier for us to attract a brand partner. But you guys have done a great job, though. The Sprite thing was, I think, a great example of taking a game that wasn't on something else. It was your game.
Right. We took a game called Street Hoops, which was a street basketball game, and partnered with Sprite, and it was all part of capturing the lifestyle feel of street basketball. So we partnered with a clothing company, and we partnered with shoe company, and we partnered with Sprite, and that was all in capturing the flair, the whole urban street feel of basketball, and it was very successful. And Street Hoops, as a game, didn't get great reviews, but the sales were very strong because I think we were more proactive in going after, you know, the feel that we did, and the marketing campaign reflected that.
And that's a great example of leveraging that, taking maybe a smaller, I mean, your budget doesn't need to be as strong when you're using your partner's exposure and equity. So that's kind of the key thing, is that your Sprite brought on pack. And so it's not your pack now anymore, it's Sprite's bottles and Sprite's packages that are communicating your equity for the game. And that's huge value for lowering your marketing costs.
Yeah. So if you can get a licensor, take them for all their worth. So the next topic, one that I find very interesting, is at the moment is the games industry is expanding into areas it's never actually touched before. There are titles coming out like Grand Theft Auto and The Sims that are selling ludicrous numbers of copies. You know, gaming is now reaching people. They're not specifically buying a product, but they're playing something like maybe Collapse on the internet. New technologies like mobile phones and digital television are opening gaming up to entirely new sectors of the population who would never go out and buy a PlayStation 2, you know, held a gun to their head. So the challenge for the industry as it moves forward is probably, how do we reach this mass market, the fabled mass market? This is kind of the holy grail for everyone. We want to sell 24 million copies of everything. That's good. But how do we do it? You know, we've looked at the traditional approach, we've looked at how licenses can actually add to that. But in terms of reaching people who would never otherwise play games, ladies and gentlemen,
Well,
how do you start?
I think it's tricky on a limited budget, and I want to be sensitive again to those people who really want to hear about the limited budget. So I think we employ sort of an integrated approach, which works pretty effectively, and that's taking, you know, your point of sale and your retail partners and your channels and whatever they're going to do for you there. And that even includes your packaging and any other promotions or pre-sales materials that you can put together and work out with individual channels, as well as your PR, your web, community relations, and again, that's a sort of super fan-based guerrilla tactics, as well as your product marketing materials, and make sure that you've got a mix that's going to work most effectively for the title against the target. So as flexible as you can be and innovative as you can be with the integrated approach, I think you're going to come out a little bit more strongly in this pretty loud, crazy world.
So do you think it's actually possible to reach a broader audience and still stay within a smaller marketing budget?
I do, and I think the consumer press is really starting to latch on to gaming and really knows that it's you know, a viable market, and so you know, we're seeing a lot of interest from the Rolling Stones and the Spins and the FHMs and the Maxims and even then beyond that. So I think you know, even they cover gaming on CNN, which is kind of exciting. So I think the world is becoming a little bit more aware, and we are beyond talking to ourselves about ourselves, and so I think you can make quite a splash, particularly in the PR arena, but using those complementary tools, web, product marketing, and PR in particular, as well as that like drive it home at the retail point of sale, it's going to be crucial.
Brent, you had a very violent reaction to that answer.
Oh, I don't know, but while I guess I respectfully disagree, only in one sense, is that it's just like every industry as it matures, it converges and it gets larger. And it's always designed to push people out. We see it in television right now, networks that don't have, I mean, ABC had a real hard time over the last couple of years because they couldn't even really afford to run promos for their new shows because they had to sell as much advertising as they could to get over, you know, some of the problems that the network was having. And so I see it even with the networks. You see it all the time. As the game gets bigger, it just gets harder and harder for you to find that space. And so I don't know. I just see the video game industry turning into more of if you can't sell 2 million copies of your game, where are you?
Right. I agree with Brent. I think there's really a mentality that you're seeing in a lot of the CEOs in the game industry when you talk in their conference calls, and basically they're all saying the same thing, which is you got to bet big to win big. You can't afford to make titles anymore that are only going to sell 200,000 copies, and you need to support them with a kick-ass marketing campaign, and that kick-ass marketing campaign is going to cost you money. And I know that that's kind of counter to the whole point of this discussion today, but I mean, obviously TV is a big role in expanding your market out from the game community, going into less specialized press, starting with moving from game press to lifestyle press, for example. If you've got, let's say you've got a game that's, a Grand Theft Auto type game that's targeted towards young adults, when you start going into Stuff and Maxim and FHM and away from the core games where you're probably already saturated with PR. And then, the next step is obviously to find vehicles that will, expand that even further. One thing that is an option that isn't quite as expensive as TV, that's not being used as much, but it's starting to get more popular, is in-cinema advertising in the US. And that's been very popular in Europe for some time, but just now it's starting to take off here. And I know for Spider-Man and for our X-Men, our X2 game, we were able to buy 30-second previews on screen through some companies like Screen Vision or NCN, where the CPM is a lot cheaper than a TV buy. So you're actually going to be able to buy, like we could run our X2 promo in front of every PG-13 movie from the time that X2 came out through the end of July for the same price that we would buy a 4-week TV run. So, the number.
It's even less expensive in Canada.
Yeah, it is. So that's one way to go to the mass, and radio is another one. Radio promotions in particular. The problem, of course, with video games is a very visual experience, and so advertising on radio doesn't necessarily help you. But if you can work a promotion together with a radio partner and possibly a retailer to drive people to the stores to go and see and play the game through some sort of contest or some sort of giveaway, that is something we again did on the X2 launch that drove, we did it in the top 9 cities in the country, and it was fairly inexpensive, and it got us mainstream exposure. So there are some vehicles to do this. You're not going to do it for less than $1 million, but you don't have to spend $20 million either. I mean, there are some alternate avenues.
I think there's an interesting, when you really step back and look at it from a conceptual perspective, marketing is about serving a customer need or desire or wish. And a lot of the games aren't made for the casual gamer. I think that part of the problem is what's happened because the industry is so insular, we tend to keep building upon the retained knowledge within the industry. Like first-person shooters now are more complicated than they were a couple of years ago, et cetera, et cetera. Does anyone make games like Tetris anymore? What kind of marketing program would you need for Tetris? It's all word of mouth. I mean, no one's really striving to do those games. They are doing them on the web. I think the casual gamers are actually going on to places like The Zone and playing Hearts. They're playing, Bejeweled and all the other stuff. What we're doing, like we don't set out to make that kind of game. We don't say, well, we want to have non-hardcore gamers playing our stuff. So I think part of marketing is supposed to be product choice. It's supposed to be deciding what you do. And again, this is where developers get really scared. They go, oh, marketing people are going to tell us how to make our products. But if you have a specific goal in mind, if you want to hit a more casual, wide audience, you have to make a game that's appropriate to that audience. And as an industry, we're not doing a very good job of making the big, huge games that fit that mold. I mean, The Sims is in a sense an aberration. I mean, who would have ever predicted it to be as successful as it was? It's quite brilliant in its design and its execution. So in retrospect, you can point at it, but you almost have to wonder how many other Sims games equivalents have been killed over the years because it didn't fit into the nice categories. And I think that what would be nice to see from a marketing perspective in the future would be, getting to know the customer, getting to know the casual customer. I don't know the casual customer at all. And I don't know the people that play hearts. I know the people that play role-playing games, that play first-person shooters. I need data to figure out what these people actually want and what they expect. Can they, I can get a 12-year-old kid and have him pick up my controller and play it, and I can't get someone else that's ever played a game to do that. It's not feasible.
I think
we've tried to study casual gamers at Activision, and you find that there are more categories of casual gamers than there are of hardcore gamers. And what I mean by that is, you can point to an RPG player or a first-person shooter fan, but when you get to casual players, we started peeling layers and trying to fit them into neat categories, and we couldn't do it. There's just so many divergent tastes out there, and you have, a grandma who plays Bejeweled every night for 4 hours, and then you have kids who are, playing a kid's game, which is considered casual because it's a movie license game, and that's what mom bought them. And the whole purchase decision was, or the choice to play that game was a different avenue. And unfortunately, there's been no study that has neatly identified these niches. And I think The Sims is an example of, there was a, I don't think The Sims would have ever gotten through Activision's greenlight process, let's put it that way. I don't think we would have ever said, God, that sounds like a great mass market game. We would have said, well, who's your audience? And the marketing person would have said, I don't, it's just casual gamer.
Well, even EA, EA is publicly on record as saying they attempted to cancel The Sims. Like I was at a talk with Bing Gordon where he kind of laughed about it in retrospect 7 times. And Will Wright and his team would go back to the Skunk Works and keep working on it, tooling away. They had a vision, and in retrospect it was right. But he's also an industry luminary. There's very few people that can get away with that.
Right.
And it's remarkable, but you wonder how many of these other gems have actually not followed past through the green light.
But isn't that the same with movies and television?
Oh, it is.
And that's kind of I guess the point is, as the industry grows and it becomes the cost of starting and getting involved in the industry gets much larger, we're going to find that probably could be less innovation, which is unfortunate, and less creativity as things get bigger.
But it is a good opportunity for a smaller publisher who's not burdened with these massive structures in place that are geared towards making hardcore games, to identify a need that's out there and to go for it, and to find new distribution channels or new opportunities, whether they be online or whether they be some kind of a retail opportunity.
Some of those exist. Like I think there's a Silver Creek company that does, I can't remember what, a card game, and they've been chugging along. What you mentioned about the casual gamer is really interesting because there's so many niches. Well, people can fill the niche.
Right.
It's not like you're not going to go for a million seller. You're going to go for a nice solid 20,000 units, but you're going to have a team of 4 people working on it, and you'll sell 20,000 units. You'll rev it every year or 2, and you'll actually support yourself. You'll never sell a million copies, but you can have fun doing it.
Well, this is one of my points that I was making, Greg. The new technologies. I took a quick whirl around the show floor this morning. There's a lot of companies out there now who are looking at things like mobile phones or cell phones. When you're looking at a potential audience of 200 million in the US alone, these numbers are truly frightening. And what's happening now is you've got Java. You're going to be able to deliver games to your phone that are at least as high quality as you'll find on a Game Boy Color or Game